Governor Hogan, you can feel free to start whenever you're ready.
Well, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you all for joining us. Maryland is pleased to be virtually hosting this annual meeting of the Chesapeake Executive Council. I want to, first of all, welcome my neighbor, Governor Ralph Northam of the Commonwealth of Virginia, Senator Gene Yaw of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, and the current chair of the Chesapeake Bay Commission, the representatives of all of the other Bay states and Washington, D.C., as well as all of the advisors and advocates. And I want to sincerely thank the Chesapeake Bay Program and the planning team chairs. It's been an honor to serve as the chair of this body for the past 3 years. Our theme today is Healthy Bay, Healthy People, Healthy Economy, and how the COVID-19 pandemic has been challenging each jurisdiction and this historic partnership. The Chesapeake Bay Program Partnership is closing in on the milestone of 4 decades of work to restore our most important natural asset, the Chesapeake Bay, which is a national treasure. Our scientific understanding of the environmental challenges facing the Bay has evolved tremendously over those 4 decades. And we should all be very proud of the fact that we've never been satisfied with the status quo. Instead, we have consistently pursued opportunities to update our strategies, funding sources, policies, and laws as necessary, and the results speak for themselves. In my past 3 years as chair, we have collaboratively implemented and updated the Phase 6 model that incorporates the most up-to-date science to guide our restoration efforts. Each jurisdiction, with the EPA's guidance, has developed, submitted, and now begun implementing their Phase 3 watershed implementation plans, which lay out the path for each of us to reach our 2025 Bay restoration goals. We have formally identified and begun to address the threat posed by the Susquehanna River pollution coming down over the Conowingo Dam, and will soon be releasing a draft Conowingo watershed implementation plan for public input. We've also begun the process of addressing the long-term challenges posed to the Chesapeake from the impacts of extreme weather and climate change. Additionally, in my state of Maryland, we've made it a goal to ensure that all Marylanders have a clean and safe environment and have access to our state's natural resources. We recently celebrated the 30th anniversary of the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act, and are proud of the partnership between the Maryland Department of Disabilities and the Maryland Department of Natural Resources, which is making our parks more accessible. The Maryland Conservation Corps, Conservation Job Corps, and Veterans Conservation Corps all provide opportunities for youth to explore career options in the environment and natural resources fields, and are helping us diversify our workforce. The Maryland Department of Natural Resources and the University of Maryland School of Public Health recently announced the launch of a GIS mapping tool called the Park Equity Tool that will be critical in helping us identify gaps in access and opportunities for investment in future parks and green spaces in communities throughout the state. I look forward to hearing from some of my colleagues in a few minutes on their jurisdictions and on their own similar efforts within their areas. We're proud of this incredible progress in our state, the achievements of this partnership, and the progress that is yet to come. Today, I'm pleased to announce that we are taking steps to promote diversity and inclusion through our partnership. The Executive Council accepted the Chesapeake Bay Program's new Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice strategy that we've been working on over the past year, which details a path to realize greater representation and participation of all our stakeholders as we move forward. Additionally, we were proud to sign the accompanying Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice statement, which you now see up on the screen, to codify this commitment. I'm pleased to report the development and acceptance of a new Chesapeake Forest Restoration Strategy, which identifies a variety of opportunities for our jurisdictions, the federal government, and nonprofits to work together to further our collective forest restoration goals. Now, before we move on with our agenda, there are a few special people that I'd like to recognize. This year, 2020, is the 40th anniversary of the creation of the Chesapeake Bay Commission, which is actually older than the Chesapeake Bay program itself. In recognition of this incredible milestone, I would like to virtually present this. I wish I could hand it to him, but I'm going to virtually present Senator Jean Yaw, the current chair of the CBC, with an official governor's citation here from the state of Maryland. So here you go. Congratulations. I'm going to get this to you. But anyone who has had the pleasure of working with the commission is very familiar also with its director, Ann Swanson, who's led this organization for more than 3 decades. And Ann is a pleasure to work with, and one of the primary reasons why this partnership has made all the progress we have over the years. So in recognition of the commission's 40th anniversary and Ann's more than 30 years as director, and the fact that 2020 is the year of the woman here in Maryland, I want to present virtually to Ann Swanson a Maryland governor's citation as well. Ann, thank you so much for your many years of dedicated service.
Governor, if I might, I really appreciate that. Thank you. It's been an honor, and it is an honor to be associated with the Chesapeake Bay Commission. It is a one of its kind governmental agency, I guess, it's very unique. And I mentioned this in the Executive Council meeting before, that I don't think I've ever had the experience of serving on an organization or with an organization like the Chesapeake Bay Commission. So thank you very much. And I know on behalf of Ann, she appreciates it also. So thank you.
Thank you for all your many years of dedication. I also would like to extend the Executive Council's appreciation and well wishes to one of the key individuals who's been working behind the scenes and doing an incredible job for the past 3.5 years. And that's Ms. Laurel Abowd, who was the primary staffer for scheduling, organizing, and facilitating the Partnerships Management Board. And she's moving on to the University of California, Santa Barbara to pursue graduate studies in environmental science and management. So Laurel, we wish you all the best in your future endeavors as well. And finally today, it's my pleasure to announce that during our private meeting earlier today, we unanimously elected my good friend and colleague, Governor Ralph Northam from the Commonwealth of Virginia, to serve as the new chair of this Executive Council. So Governor, congratulations to you. I'm very much looking forward to continuing to work alongside you, and I wish you all the best in your term as chairman. And with that, I'm very happy to turn it over to you, Governor Northam, to introduce today's keynote speaker.
Well, Governor Hogan, thank you so much. And you might not know this, but I have your cell number, and if I run into any hiccups, I'll be sure to call you. But I just wanted to publicly thank you for your leadership over the years. And as you know, I've spent a lot of time on the Chesapeake Bay, and I have watched the progress that we have made, and it's because of your leadership, and especially being able to bring the leaders and the staff from the surrounding states, 6 of them, keeping them at the table, through thick and thin, and just really working toward the restoration of the Bay. And so on behalf of all of us, I say thank you for your leadership, and also for those of you that probably know this but maybe didn't. We have the National Governors Association, and Governor Hogan has also been the chair of that, and since I've been governor in Virginia, and what tremendous leadership he has shown, and especially this pandemic has really affected all of the states. We've all been, competing for PPE and testing, and just to his leadership that's kept us all together, working together, sharing thoughts, has been amazing. So Governor Hogan, I thank you for all that you've done and will continue to do, and look forward to working with you in the upcoming year, as well as the other folks that are involved in this.
Thank you very much, Governor.
So thank you. It's my pleasure. I want to introduce our next speaker. And I'm glad that a lot of emphasis, especially during this meeting and as we move forward, is being placed on equity and making sure that we welcome individuals to all of our states and certainly to the use of the Chesapeake Bay. And, you know, it was known by me as I took my term as governor that we have over 100,000 employees in Virginia, state employees. And I'm sure that the other governors oversee thousands and thousands of employees as well. And we didn't have in Virginia, and I don't think other states did as well, an officer of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so we made a move a little bit over a year ago to search for an individual that could come in and kind of make that a priority for our Commonwealth. And so we found Dr. Janice Underwood. And just a little bit about Janice, she hails from the Commonwealth of Virginia. She received her undergraduate training at Hampton University. She went on to become a biology major. And something that I think is important for all of us to remember is to continue to expose our youth to the Chesapeake Bay and emphasize to them how important the restoration and the health of the Bay is for a lot of different reasons. Janice, after being a biology teacher, was the DEI officer at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia. And so it's a pleasure to have Janice on board. She's been in this position for a little bit over a year. She literally hit the ground running, and we've been able to really accomplish some good things in a lot of different areas regarding diversity, inclusion, and equity. So Janice, I thank you for all of your work. It's been a difficult position, but you've done an amazing job. So I'd like to introduce to all the members that are watching today, Dr. Janice Underwood, and I believe she's the first DEI officer in the country, and we're proud to have her on board. So Janice, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for that kind introduction, Governor Northam, and hello, everyone. I am truly honored for the opportunity to provide keynote remarks to the Chesapeake Bay Executive Council. And so, yes, good afternoon to you, Governor Hogan, Governor Northam, Senator Yao, Administrator Wheeler, and in their absence, Mayor Bowser, Governors Carney, Cuomo, Wolf, and Justice, and all designees that have gathered virtually with us today. I'd also like to offer a special acknowledgement to Secretary Strickler, Deputy Secretary Ann Jennings, and Miriam Carrard for their leadership as well. As I make these remarks, I want to quickly acknowledge a few things. First, it's important to recognize that today marks 100 years since the 19th Amendment was ratified in 1920. And while it was originally only levied for white women, today we have more women and women of color in historical and trailblazing roles. There's one or two in particular that come to mind right away. But this important anniversary underscores that when inequity persists, it requires those who have been marginalized to demand shared power. This isn't easy, but this is also no different than what we see happening in the environmental justice or EJ space. Secondly, I'd like to acknowledge my bias. Yes, my bias. I am personally invested in the council's success. I'm a lifelong resident of the Bay Watershed. I grew up in Maryland, enjoying the delicious seafood of the Bay and spending nearly every day of the summer for the last 25 years on the Bay as a resident of Hampton Roads, Virginia. As was mentioned, as a biology teacher and teacher educator at Old Dominion University for over 20 years, I focused many lessons on the Bay. And lastly, my family and I are lovers of water and are all too familiar with the mid-Atlantic battle over who has the best crab cake. I'll leave that right there. But as a national thought leader in the DEI space, I know that equity initiatives like increasing workforce diversity and confronting our culture of systemic racism are just as important as EJ reform to our economic sustainability, our public health, and to those who have unfairly carried the burden of discrimination and marginalization. For this reason, I have been engaged specifically with the Virginia Council on Environmental Justice since my first week as Governor Northam's Chief Diversity Officer. That said, I'm also pleased to share with you that I played a role in drafting the justice statement before you today, which is a good first step. Governors, senator, designees, your partnership and dedication to equitably rebuilding for the citizens of this region an environmentally and economically sustainable Chesapeake Bay watershed is unique and uncommon to conservation endeavors across this country. Thus, it is fair to say that your actions set the bar high for other watershed restoration efforts. And the way you will center historically marginalized voices in this process will be a guide for others to follow. I expect this will be true for all of your actions generally around social justice issues. And I applaud the work of the Principal Staff Committee to move quickly beyond words and into action through their adoption of an action statement with teeth. This builds confidence that the DEIJ will take a front seat in saving the Bay. But now we must see these teeth bite into the inequities that have long existed in the conservation space. Your statement recognizes that each member of this Executive Council has also taken action individually to address DEIJ needs. We have done the same in Virginia. Governor Northam, in partnership with our General Assembly, passed a series of bills this past winter that cement EJ in our state policy and codifies a permanent Virginia Council on Environmental Justice. And my role, also made permanent by the General Assembly earlier this year as Governor Northam's Chief Diversity Officer, is the first of its kind at the cabinet level in Virginia and to exist nationally. Yet, while each of you has taken action individually, your collective DEIJ statement acknowledges that together, in partnership, you have much more work ahead. Today, explicit evidence of discrimination and Jim Crow segregation in the environment has dimmed. For instance, Black and brown lovers of the Chesapeake Bay, like me, are no longer segregated from whites-only beaches. No longer do Black Americans have to fight for their own outdoor spaces, such as the Green Pastures Outdoor Recreation Park in the James River watershed. No longer do Bay residents consider Green Pastures to be the Black Park and nearby Dowfit State Park, the White Park. Today, discrimination is not as explicit as Jim Crow, but instead exists as James Crow Esquire, which is a bit more cunning and insidious and easily overlooked. For example, after much hindsight, we now recognize that the bounties of the Chesapeake Bay and the rivers and streams threading throughout its watershed are for the benefit of all, regardless of your color, tribal affiliation, or your zip code. Today, we publicly acknowledge that clean air and water and the enjoyment of the outdoors is a human right. While we can all agree on the veracity of these statements, the reality is that they ring hollow for underrepresented and disadvantaged communities because there has been a movement by the haves to hijack the power of the conservation movement from those who have less. Or worse, we use our power as well-intended allies to ultimately advance racist policies and practices, all the while claiming an anti-racist ideology. The ongoing pandemic has highlighted for Americans the disproportionate impact that polluted air and polluted water has on public health within communities of color. The resulting higher rates of death from COVID-19 in those communities should alarm all of us towards sustained action. Further, as the coronavirus drives many into the outdoors for exercise and peace of mind, Virginians are enjoying our state parks, wildlife management areas, and natural heritage sites in record numbers. But regrettably, yet not surprisingly, low-income communities and communities of color are far more likely to be nature deprived than white communities. Will the work of restoring the splendor of the Chesapeake Bay, the research, the planning, the implementation, the funding, Will they address these disparities in clean air, clean water, and access to the outdoors? Are you confident that your plans and strategies for meeting the partnership's 2014 commitments fully and completely engages the diversity of the Bay's residents? Well, if you are in doubt or ignore any of these questions, you will not succeed. DEIJ are catalysts for organizational and fiscal excellence and can be catalysts for a restored Chesapeake Bay. If you don't remember anything else I say today, please know that to fully realize your goal of rebuilding an environmentally and economically sustainable Chesapeake Bay watershed for all the citizens of this region, you must be willing to break down the systemic barriers purposely and illegally established decades ago to marginalize certain communities. Your work here is no different and no less impactful than the calls for racial justice playing out on the streets of Richmond, New York City, Annapolis, DC, Harrisburg, and across our globe. We will excel by resisting the automatic reflex toward a defensive posture when facing these facts, and instead you must incorporate diversity efforts into the core of your organizational functioning. Consultants to the Chesapeake Bay program, SKIO Solutions, have laid out an extensive roadmap, including calling for building relationships with diverse communities and groups and incorporating these diverse leaders into decision-making, grant-making, implementation, and evaluation. These actions will be critical to reverse the status quo of largely white professionals guiding conservation efforts. Since early 2020, Virginia has applied a health equity lens to our COVID-19 response while fostering statewide conversations on our reckoning on racial injustice, and I suspect your states have as well. For building a more inclusive Chesapeake Bay restoration community, we can apply our lessons learned from the last 6 months, which revealed for some that racism, the larger public health crisis, disproportionately impacts the same communities who have traditionally been forgotten in the EJ space. So leading with an equity and justice-minded lens must be more than lip service. It can be boiled down to 3 areas. Number 1, governance equity. This is achieved when we vertically and horizontally broaden the diversity of those who are delegated for collaborative problem solving and decision-making, which also includes a rejection of toxic and manipulative control or power. This does not mean creating the illusion of diverse work groups, while a small inner group of white men and women hold the decision-making power. Instead, we must over-communicate with historically underrepresented communities and prioritize new voices at the inner table of decision-making. These communities will not immediately trust government because of the lack of involvement or agency given in this work, but it must be done to achieve equity. 2, resource allocation. This is the way in which resources and services are procured, promoted, and provided in proximity to those who most need or require them to survive or thrive. And 3, problem solving. This is the extent to which solutions and outcomes are transformative, justice-oriented, and liberating from the structural inequities that are sustained by a misguided commitment to the status quo. Now, this last one is usually a tough one to swallow because no one I know likes to admit that we are all operating in systems in which explicit racism only became politically inexpedient less than 60 years ago, which makes anti-racist governance now all the more difficult. Therefore, we must continuously interrogate and confront our own personal biases and our own personal influence to advance anti-racist policies that empower a sense of belonging, and I mean true belonging, to all people. So in closing, in addition to these 3 factors, accountability and transparency will be the keys to your success. Now, it will be uncomfortable and hard work because you will be reckoning with the ghosts of our past and present. I always say, you can't change what you don't measure, and you can't measure that which you don't acknowledge. Whatever you do, you need a strong, measurable plan to confront the 401 years of oppression our waterways have been used to exploit Black, brown, and Native lives, all of whom matter. So, publicly measuring your progress toward your 2018 commitment to a numeric goal for diversity and inclusion, growing racial and ethnic diversity from 13 to 25% will be just as important as biannually measuring your progress toward the Chesapeake Bay TMDLs for nitrogen and phosphorus. Perhaps the council should consider applying the Bay TMDL milestone approach to accountability to your DEIJ goals. I'd like to leave you with this. The first and second governors of Virginia helped to institutionalize inequity into our systems. But the 73rd governor of Virginia was bold enough to appoint me and others in this administration to dismantle those policies, in part for the hope of future generations to enjoy a saved Chesapeake Bay and a more inclusive region. And for those reasons, I am a willing accomplice in this work, and I am looking for good and necessary trouble. Thank you so much, and I look forward to the work ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Underwood. Thank you very much. At this time, we're going to open up the floor to the members of the Executive Council who are joining us here today, and we're going to begin with Governor Northam. Give some remarks.
Well, Governor Hogan, again, thank you for the introduction and your leadership. And just for the record, before I get into my comments, Dr. Underwood, she knows full well where the best crab cakes are, but she was just trying to be diplomatic.
It was very nice of her to not embarrass you like that.
I wasn't going to say anything, Governor Hogan, but she opened the door just a little bit. So I thought I would make that clear. But again, on behalf of this Executive Council, I want to thank you for your leadership on behalf of the Bay. I really, and again, I speak for everybody, I appreciate the work that you and your staff have done to advance the goals of our partnership, especially during the challenges that I said earlier that were created by this pandemic. And Dr. Underwood, great remarks. I also thank you for all of your service to the Commonwealth. And as the first cabinet level diversity, equity, and inclusion officer in any state, you have literally played an indispensable role in our efforts to grapple with Virginia's legacy of racism and inequality. As I have said many times during my personal education on race and equity, we all have a lot to learn, and we must welcome difficult conversations. In Virginia, we're having those conversations, and we're using them to support policy reform in criminal justice, education, healthcare, and for today's discussion, the environment. So I'm honored to join my fellow Executive Council members in signing and announcing the Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice Statement. This statement and the strategy it supports for the Bay Partnership are great first steps. We must build equity into all aspects of our restoration work and really make sure that all people, not just a privileged few, reap the benefits of conservation efforts. That also means that our water quality work includes ensuring fishable, swimmable streams throughout the watershed. That benefits people who may have better access to streams than to the Bay itself. In Virginia, the James River watershed is a great example. We have a number of underperforming wastewater treatment plants serving and discharging near communities of color. Cleaning up those plants is a big part of our clean water blueprint, which will have great benefits for the Bay. The pandemic has highlighted the importance of clean air, clean water, and public lands to our physical and mental well-being. Even during economic downturns, it's important to continue our investments in the environment. In Virginia, we're currently working on a revised budget plan, but we know it's important to maintain funding for our Chesapeake Bay cleanup plan, as well as land conservation efforts. So achieving our 2025 Bay restoration deadline remains a cornerstone of our administration. I'm incredibly proud of the job Virginia state agencies continue to do, even with all the challenges presented by the pandemic. And we are on track to execute our watershed implementation plan. But Virginia, as you know, cannot do it alone. We need the help of all of our Bay partners. And So as the incoming chairman of the Executive Council, I really look forward to actively engaging all of you in this difficult but necessary work. I was first motivated to run for office way back in '07 because of my concern for the health of the Chesapeake Bay. I grew up fishing and boating on its waters, and I was alarmed at the loss of underwater grasses and water clarity. So I want the Bay to be healthy for our children and grandchildren. I'm honored to be the incoming chairman of this important body that is devoted to supporting and improving the condition of the Bay. The Chesapeake Bay is a national treasure. Our work to restore it is a national example for how environmental protection and natural resource conservation benefits everyone. We will only achieve true and lasting success when we include and elevate people of different races, ethnicities, income levels, faiths, genders, ages, sexual orientations, and abilities. So I look forward to continuing to work with the Chesapeake Bay Partnership to advance our commitments to a restored bay and to ensure that all residents of the watershed now and in the future have a voice in this important endeavor. I'd now like to recognize the chairman of the Chesapeake Bay Commission, Pennsylvania State Senator Gene Yaw, for his remarks. Welcome, Senator Yaw, and thank you for all that you've done.
Thank you, Governor Northam, and congratulations on your new position as the Executive Council Chair. I'd also, once again, like to thank Governor Hogan for your leadership and also the recognition that you gave us earlier today of the 40th anniversary of the Chesapeake Bay Commission. I'd just like to take a couple of minutes to emphasize the collaborative nature of the Chesapeake Bay program and the strengths that we have when we work together as partners. It's an honor to be working with all of you from all across this watershed. I'm a state senator from Pennsylvania, and admittedly, we have issues and disagreements among the states at some levels. I don't question that. That's also why I think that the Chesapeake Bay program and its members' commitment to collaboration and partnering is so important. The program provides space that allows us to look at past individual state interests to see the broader science, policy, and funding challenges that we must overcome if we are to achieve clean water in the Bay. I'm a Pennsylvanian, but I'm not representing the Commonwealth today. Rather, I am here as the chairman of the Chesapeake Bay Commission. That's the only member of the Executive Council representing the legislative branch of the government. The commission is a tri-state representing the General Assemblies of Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Virginia. And together our member states comprise about 80% of the land in the watershed, 90% of the pollutant load. As noted earlier, 2020 marks the 40th anniversary of the Chesapeake Bay Commission. And I sound like a cheerleader for the commission, but I've said this before, it's a unique organization. And if I had to describe it in a few words, the members that I serve with on the commission, one word is understanding, another is cooperation, another is collaboration, and probably most of all, and I know that this may be hard for some people to believe, but there is actually friendship among the members as we work together. And I don't think that that can be overlooked or underestimated. The commission members who are legislators individually represent but a small part of the watershed. We are very aware of the priorities and challenges that face our part of the watershed and our local communities. I represent a rural area in north central Pennsylvania. It's one of the largest, it's the second largest Senate district in the state. I cover 3,600 square miles. I represent 5 counties, but 2 of those individual counties are larger, each of them, than the state of Rhode Island. In contrast, other areas in Pennsylvania are measured in terms of city blocks. The diversity is a good thing. When we enter our assembly chambers, we know that the only way to get things done is to listen to stakeholders, listen to our colleagues from other parts of the states, and the ones that we have strong political differences with are very important, and collaborate to build a coalition. That's the only way that we can govern. I'm honored to sign today on behalf of the Chesapeake Bay Commission, the Executive Council's Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Justice Statement. Just as we as legislators listen to diverse voices in the General Assembly, we as members of the Chesapeake Executive Council must continue to improve our efforts to engage with and listen to and learn from all citizens in the 64,000 square mile watershed that we are involved in. There are significant opportunities before us. The past few months, with the country working to come to terms with the pandemic and the legacy of racial injustice, have reminded us of the need for safe and accessible public spaces to recreate, for places to interact with nature, for reliable and sustainable sources of locally produced food, for clean air, clean water. And when we can meet the needs of our local communities, we will also be providing clean water to the Chesapeake Bay. Sadly, we have seen how far we have fallen short as parks are exceeding capacity, poor air quality has exacerbated impacts of COVID, the fragility of our food supply chain has been exposed, and almost 1/3 of our local waters are not safe for fishing, swimming, or drinking. When we can meet the needs of our local communities, we will also be providing clean water to the Chesapeake Bay. We cannot do this without adequate financial resources. This was a challenge before COVID, and it will only get worse. As our states now face unanticipated and unprecedented deficits, the Commission and Executive Council, we together must continue to advocate for resources that both the state and at the federal levels. The pandemic has proved that the environment is not dispensable. It is core to our well-being. We must also be more effective with the resources we do have. Scientific data and analysis made possible through the Bay Program Partnership makes it possible for us to know the geographic areas and practices that will get us the most effective return on our investment. By listening to the science, listening to our neighbors, working together to achieve a healthy watershed, we will see a healthy Chesapeake Bay without question. It will take all parties, every region, every culture, and it can be done. We need to stay the course. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to address the council.
Hi. Thank you, Senator. And on behalf of EPA Administrator Andrew Wheeler, thank you for the opportunity to reaffirm EPA's strong commitment to the restoration of the Chesapeake Bay. We're aware of the unique challenges presented by COVID-19 to staying on track with the restoration and keeping people safe. So while Chesapeake Bay restoration has been an important part of what we've been doing during the pandemic, we've also been responsible for a lot of other areas in response to the pandemic. Among our actions in this pandemic, we've approved more than 460 products that are helping to reduce the spread of COVID-19. We've given consumers additional options for COVID-19 disinfectants, supplied personal protective equipment where it's needed most, and provided grant funding to support environmental justice communities impacted by the pandemic. EPA continues to maintain a strong compliance enforcement program, including its role in ensuring that state and local environmental agencies have the tools and resources they need to continue to implement their programs in these challenging times. We also recognize the need to ensure that all communities and neighborhoods and the benefit in our work. EPA works day in and day out to provide clean air, clean water, and clean land regardless of zip code. EPA has made $1 million in grant funding available to states to help environmental justice communities address COVID-19 concerns faced by low-income and minority communities. EPA also looks forward to working with its federal partners in the Bay jurisdictions and implementing the diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice strategy. We will build on the strong environmental justice program we have throughout the Bay Partnership in order to achieve our goals. EPA continues to reinforce with our employees on a national and regional basis our zero tolerance for discrimination in the workplace and our pride in EPA's diverse workforce. Diversity does make us stronger as an agency, and it makes us more attuned to meeting the needs of the diverse society we serve. Speaking to our collective Bay commitments, EPA respects its role in helping our partnership achieve its 2025 Bay TMDL goals. We will continue to provide substantial funding and technical assistance to support restoration activities as we track and report progress towards our partnership goals. We will continue to take appropriate action within our Clean Water Act authorities when needed. And in line with the diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice statements we approved today, EPA recommits to ensuring that all residents and communities benefit from our collective efforts. We appreciate the unique opportunity for the partnership to realize the environmental, economic, and quality of life benefits of a restored bay and local rivers and streams. Together, we've made significant progress, but our recent evaluations of the state's 2-year milestones show we still have much to do to hit our targets. So we will continue to fulfill our partnership role in assessing, supporting, and overseeing commitments by the states to put practices in place by 2025 to fully restore the Bay. We have confidence that the Bay jurisdictions will review the feedback in our evaluations and adjust their plans and milestone commitments as necessary. The EPA committed in its evaluations to work with each of the Bay jurisdictions to develop specific oversight and assistance activities to support implementation efforts, including funding, technical assistance, training, and regulatory reviews. Since the 2010 release of the Chesapeake Bay TMDL, EPA and its federal partners have provided sustained assistance to the Bay states to support their restoration actions. From wastewater treatment plant upgrades to agricultural best management practices to stormwater control. For example, NOAA and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers are working with Maryland and Virginia to implement the largest oyster restoration effort in the world. These restored reefs improve water quality and clarity and produce baby oysters to seed other areas of the bay and improve commercial and recreational fishing opportunities for the fish that live in and around the reefs, estimated to return to tens of millions of dollars to nearby coastal communities. So thank you again for the opportunity to reaffirm our commitment to the restoration, our support of our state partners, and our duty to prevent and respond to issues of inequity and injustice. And now I'd like to turn it over to the Secretary of Delaware, Secretary Garvin. Thank you.
Thank you, Acting Deputy Administrator Benevidian. I really want to recognize and thank your Region 3 team led by Regional Administrator Cosmo Servideo and the rest of the Region 3 team and all the support that they've given to all of us in the Chesapeake Bay efforts, as well as just on a whole lot of other environmental issues. Governor Carney wanted me to pass along his regrets. He actually participated in part of the earlier meeting, but is attending a funeral for Major General Timmons, the first female to lead up Delaware's National Guard. So he wanted me to pass along a couple of things to all of our partners in the Bay effort. Number one is Delaware's commitment to the diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice statement. We are looking at this in parallel to all the work that is already going on in Delaware, but more importantly, not as just something we talk about, not as something we take off the shelf, but something the way we go about doing our business. And so we look forward to partnering with all of the other states in that effort. And I think the PSC is going to be in a position to lead those implementation efforts. I want to thank Governor Hogan for all of his leadership over the last several years, and especially to the Maryland team, but particularly Secretary Grumbles, who had the pleasure, I guess we'll say, of being the chair of the PSC, something I know I know well, and it's not an easy task. And so I thank Ben for all that you've done. I want to congratulate you, Governor Northam, for taking over the mantle of leadership of the Executive Council, and Matt Strickler, Secretary Strickler, I believe is going to be an amazing chair of the PSC. And I'm sure Ben's ready to hand over the gavel to him as well. Delaware continues to do our part to meet our responsibilities to meeting water quality in the Chesapeake Bay. But we all got thrown a curveball about 5 months ago with COVID-19. And we are still committed to finding ways to resource and invest and utilize federal dollars. But there were a few things like Clean Water for Delaware Fund that was being set up, and the effort for 1 million trees that is taking a little bit of hit. And so we're going to continue to figure out and work our way to meet our various commitments under the watershed implementation plans. And then lastly, and most importantly, continuing to work on how do we invest in our communities? How do we get into our communities to support their efforts, not just for water quality, but in leveraging funds and leveraging efforts for quality of life benefits in those communities. We have a breakdown of about 40+ % of our Chesapeake Bay lands are agriculture. Another 40% is natural areas, and then we've got about 20%, which is our small and local communities. And we are looking to make sure that we have a big tent and a big table to include as many folks in those conversations and figuring out how do we not only communicate, but invest in those communities to not only look at equity issues, but also looking at quality of life issues. And so I thank you again, Governor Hogan. Congratulate you, Governor Northam. And at this time, it is my distinct pleasure to introduce somebody I worked with for a very long time. I consider a friend, our colleague, Director Tommy Wells from District of Columbia.
Thank you, Secretary Garvin, Governor Hogan, Governor Northam, and all the members of the Executive Council. I'm honored to be here on behalf of our Mayor Muriel Bowser, joining leaders who are finding innovative solutions to the unique challenges we face in cleaning up our rivers, our streams, and especially the Chesapeake Bay. I want to share my appreciation on behalf of Mayor Bowser to Governor Hogan for his historic leadership of the Bay program for 3 years. And of course, as my friend Sean Garvin noted, our friend Ben Grumbles, who's done an extraordinary job to keep us together, keep us focused on cleaning up the Chesapeake Bay. Like everywhere else, the coronavirus pandemic has already had a lasting impact on Washington, D.C., and has disproportionately harmed Black and Brown communities. 74% of the lives lost in D.C. have been Black residents, and district workers in industries hardest hit by COVID-19 are likely to be Black or Latino and live in low-income households. This disproportionate impacts only reinforces the need for the strong commitment to diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. On behalf of Mayor Bowser, I commend the DEIJ statement signed by this council, which will help the Chesapeake Bay program's implementation efforts better engage and serve the diverse communities that make up the Chesapeake Bay watershed. The district is committed to advancing the goals of this statement. In DC, our job training programs are one of the ways that we are addressing inequities facing Black and Latino residents. Training and employing a green workforce is central to the Bowser administration's goal for the district to be a sustainable and resilient city that gives every resident a fair shot. Our River Corps and Green Zone environmental programs quickly pivoted to operate virtually during the public health emergency. The skills and income these programs provide and the job opportunities they create for under and unemployed residents are increasingly important during the COVID epidemic. In the district, we understand the benefits of natural areas to mental and physical health. Through our work on Kingman Island and Heritage Islands in the heart of the Anacostia River, we're making these areas more inclusive so Black and Brown communities hardest hit by COVID-19 have equitable access to natural and outdoor spaces. On behalf of Mayor Bowser, thank you. The district continues to be a proud partner in the Chesapeake Bay Partnership, and we commend the leadership of this council and what we've been able to do under Governor Hogan and support our collective efforts at a time when working together is more important than ever, and now under the leadership of Governor Northam. And now I'm pleased to introduce Basil Sagos, Commissioner of the New York State Department Environmental Conservation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Director. And really thank you all on behalf of Governor Cuomo. It's a pleasure to be with you all today. I want to thank really the Chesapeake Bay states who've been carrying the load on this for many years, the great work that you've done. Governor Hogan, thank you for your work, and congratulations on passing the baton to Governor Northam. And to Dr. Underwood, who gave very inspiring remarks today, and I think helped to ground us all in why we're doing this. New York has we are the northern state in the watershed, but not an insignificant part of the watershed. We have 640,000 residents here in New York that are part of the watershed, and 3.6 million acres. So, the statistics are significant, and New Yorkers often have to be reminded about the Chesapeake, the fact that it is important to us. So these partnerships that we have are really important. Incidentally, my first legal internship was at the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, and I had the chance to stock some oysters on the Eastern Shore a few times. So I feel like it's given me some credibility, at least for today during these remarks. But I do have a soft spot in my heart for the Chesapeake. It's been said already on this this great meeting how difficult, how grim of a year it has been for all of us. Certainly have felt the trouble of and the great tragedy of the coronavirus here in New York, which has been incredibly hard hit. Governor Cuomo, as you all know, has worked very closely with the governors here today on the phone with us, and really here in New York, to mobilize the entire government towards a response, and that included sending commissioners out to do things that are outside of our wheelhouse, because we are one government and we had to do what it took to flatten the curve. So whether it was in building testing sites or hospitals or helping to deliver food supplies, it's been a humbling year, I think, for all of us, and we've learned a great deal. And I think learning this year is really important, and probably has reinforced some of the things that we've already known as a society. First, science matters, right? We all, I believe on this call, our states had embraced science. Certainly the governor decided that we would be led here by science, and that would help us make the hard decisions with coronavirus. Second, that government matters. I mean, our institutions matter. Our institutions were created for specific purposes, not for sunny days, but often for these very rainy days that we've had now. So the combination of science and government has helped us to solve these incredible problems. Then I think, as has been said, the disproportionate impact of the coronavirus on communities of color has only reinforced, I think, our collective will to do better. And certainly those are the same communities that are being most disproportionately impacted by pollution or climate change. So certainly all of this is interlinked, and we have a unique moment in time right now, I believe, to speak to the residents of our states, to inspire them to a more ambitious and a bigger and bolder agenda. And I think that's what validates the work that we have done to sign this very important statement, which I think, as Dr. Underwood has noted, is an important starting point. It's not the end point. It is the starting point, and all of us are now certainly a part of it. So we are firmly committed to environmental justice in New York. Last year we signed, the governor signed what at least the New York Times called the most ambitious climate law in the country, and maybe of any developed economy in the world. And its centerpiece of that is the inclusion of disadvantaged communities in the decision-making process. That's something that we are working on as we begin to transition our entire economy towards a carbon neutral economy in certain time. But today, certainly about the Chesapeake, congratulate all of you for your incredibly hard work. We're honored to be a part of it, honored to sign on this starting point, this very inspirational statement, and look forward to working with you in the months and years to come. So congratulations. And with that, I am Honored to introduce my friend from the South, and I guess you are all from the South, and you are all my friends, but Secretary Patrick Mcdonald from Pennsylvania.
Good afternoon, everybody. Pleasure to be here with you all. I'll reiterate congratulations to Governor Northam for taking on the mantle. And thank you, Governor Hogan, for all of the leadership that you've shown over the last many years, and I know will continue to show. Governor Wolf sends his regrets that he could not be here with us all today. But there's certainly a lot going on within the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania in terms of the Bay. Some of what we've all been talking about is the impact of COVID-19 and how that's had an impact. There's some very practical things that we've seen in our state. Things like the virus hitting at a moment where you would be out planting trees and not having impacts on issues like that. But I think that the strength of the partnership and the approaches that we've taken here is also underlined by this. When we first started encountering the issues related to COVID-19, our partners' reaction was not one of, does this mean I get 6 more months or how do we push? They wanted to know that we were there to continue to support them through their efforts, particularly in Lancaster County, which is such a critical partner for us. In everything that we do, Bay related, almost a little over actually, 1 out of every 4 pounds of nitrogen comes out of that county. So we've had, the partnership that we've been able to build through this process with the farm community, with locals there in Lancaster is really, really what has allowed us to be successful and to continue success, even as we encounter the hardest of times. One thing, within the effort, and want to in particular thank Dr. Underwood for your words today, and agree with my colleague to the north that this is a starting point, that a lot more action needs to be taken. There's a lot of things that we've done as a department, as a state, around environmental justice, around social justice issues. And a lot of that has started with listening and being out in communities to hear what they're up against. But more needs to be done. A lot more needs to be done. And the events of the last several months certainly underline that. So I was very proud to see both the statement by this council as well as the principal staff committee statement that as was said, puts teeth. Now we got to use them to the work. We are very, in particular, excited about the forest restoration strategy and the partnership with USDA. Through that, we think the forestry piece of this is going to be critical to the success across all of the sectors. It's one of those BMPs, best management practices, that really cuts across a lot of what we do, whether it's stormwater, agriculture, et cetera. So seeing movement on that is critical for us. On the diversity piece, the last thing I'll say is we need both the Chesapeake Bay and our watersheds to all be seen as for everyone. And that means listening to what their value is, what values they take from this. So I'm incredibly excited to engage in that conversation over the coming months to see how best we can make sure all of our grant programs, all of our technical assistance programs are properly focused to support those communities that need it the most. Thank you all again for all the great work you do across the watershed. And with that, it gives me great pleasure to introduce my colleague and friend from West Virginia, Austin Caperton.
Well, thank you very much. And on behalf of Governor Justice, thank you for your service, Governors Hogan and Northam. As I said earlier in the private meeting, it's been a pleasure getting to know both of you and work with you, and really quite an honor. And in keeping with theme of a healthy bay, West Virginia has already achieved the numeric values that we promised for 2025, but we will continue to do more work so that we improve even further. We're big believers in the Chesapeake Bay. As a matter of fact, one of my nieces lives in Richmond, Virginia, and she and her husband have a home on the bay. So she won't forgive me if we don't do a good job in that regard. As far as diversity and people or healthy people, West Virginia, unbeknownst to many of you probably, is really much more diverse than you might imagine, based on how our state grew in the coal industry and other basic industries on the backs of many people from many countries of many different colors. And we all have work to do. We acknowledge that, and we will continue that work and applaud the efforts of others to do same. And as far as healthy economy, the Eastern Panhandle and the Potomac Basin represents some of the best parts of the economy of West Virginia, and we intend to continue to build on that. So thank you once again for the opportunity to be here, and it's an honor.
Well, thank you all very much. I want to just say thank you to all the members and the representatives for their remarks and all their great work. And now as my final act as the Executive Council Chairman, it is my great pleasure to turn the gavel over to our newly elected chair from the Commonwealth of Virginia, Governor Ralph Northam. Again, with my best wishes and congratulations on your chairmanship. I'm going to turn it over to you for any final remarks. Governor.
Well, Governor Hogan, thank you. And first of all, again, for your amazing leadership and tough shoes to fill, but I will do my best, and I'm excited to do that. Governor Hogan actually sent me a wonderful gift here, and I just wanted to show everybody. It's a silver platter with a beautiful blue crab on it, and I assume that's a Virginia blue crab. But just
that's a big Maryland crab right there.
But I certainly appreciate your thoughtfulness, and I hope you received. I actually sent you some clams from the southern part of the Chesapeake Bay. These are from Cherry Stone. And,
thank you very much. I look forward to that.
I kept a few of them for myself, if that's okay. But again, thank you. I know you have to jump off and to another commitment, but just in closing the meeting, I am excited to take the mantle and just appreciate the collaborative work from all of the other states and the governors and your staff. And, you know, the Chesapeake Bay is especially important to me. I grew up on the Bay. If it can be done on the Chesapeake Bay, I've done it. And I watched the demise of the Bay over my lifetime. And I want to do everything I can with your all's assistance to restore the health of the Bay for our children and grandchildren. So I look forward to working with all of you, and fingers crossed we can put this pandemic behind us. And I certainly hope that the next meeting, we can show you all the same hospitality that Governor Hogan and his staff have shown us in Maryland. And I look forward to seeing you all in person. I know we're running short on time, so I'm going to close the meeting out. And I think that if there's some press that would like to ask some questions, we'll be available to do that for just a short period of time. So thank you all. Look forward to working with you, and I will turn it over to you, Rachel.
Thank you, Governor Northam, and thank you everyone for attending today. We are running short on time. I'm going to ask the council just one question, and any other media that is on the call today, we just ask that you please reach out to me directly, or if you want to submit questions in the Q&A box, we will get back to you after the meeting. So council, the one question that we have come in right now is, have any of your jurisdictions developed or considered specific actions to support Black and Brown citizens with any of the Great American Outdoors Act's funds at state or local areas? And that's open to anyone.
So this is Pat Mcdonald. I don't know specifically about that act. I know we've put in place kind of broad guidelines around use of dollars to support environmental justice communities, low-income communities, communities of color across a number of our programs. I actually think the area we're now getting more focused on is those are also communities that are maybe least aware of those opportunities or least able to take advantage of them. So making sure we have solid technical assistance, educational outreach in those communities, that they can take advantage of those funds, even where we've created some preference is important.
Thank you very much, Secretary Mcdonald. Does anybody else want to answer that question? All right, well, thank you so much. I appreciate everybody's attendance today for a great meeting, and we will talk with you all soon.
Thank you all.